Is anyone watching right now? Let me just check this is working. I think everything is working fine. I hope everything is working fine. I'm just going to try one thing. Yeah, I think everything is working fine. So I'm going to get started with this video. First thing I want to do is talk through a few like interesting little memes and things like that came up, or things that have gone viral before we get into like some of the subject matter. What we're going to go through in this video is looking through some interesting memes, some interesting trends right now around careers. And the other thing we're going to look through would be what is going on in terms of the layoff statistics. We're also going to talk about the resumes and how to improve that and make that more effective for yourself. So we're going to go through that in a moment. First thing I want to do is go through this. I'm going to add a few more details to the comment section. Just wait one moment. Sure. So I've put my coaching link in the show comments, right? So you should be able to see that. What I want to get into right now is what's going on in terms of this meme, this quote you can see on your screen right now, right? So what you can see on your screen is a quote I put out that I found on YouTube, Twitter actually, right? And what it's saying is, a man on a 1,000-mile walk has to forget his ultimate goal and say to himself every morning, today I'm going to cover 25 miles and then rest up and sleep. Now, what does that mean, and why did I put that there? The whole point I wanted to make with keeping this quote here is, whether it's me setting up my YouTube channel and growing that, or even doing a live stream right now, or it's you taking the next step in your career, the next step in your finances, it's all about, you have the long-term goals, but each day you have to take that break, right? And that break could be, obviously going to sleep each night or focusing on other things. So say you're focused on a really important financial goal. You also have to obviously take breaks in the evening to rest up, to focus on your fitness, to focus on your health, to spend time with family. And I really thought that was an important quote, and it's kind of gone viral, this quote, on Twitter in relation to a lot of different topics, not just say finances or your life goals. Just in general. So, a man on a 1,000-mile walk has to forget his ultimate goal and say to himself every morning, today I'm going to cover 25 miles and then rest up and sleep. And so many aspects of life are like that, because many people in life right now, they feel like they're falling behind with any goal, right? Lots of people struggling to, buy somewhere to live, have some stability in their life and their career, but you're building brick by brick, like a Jenga tower, if you're familiar with that game. Like building a house is brick by brick, is one step at a time, one day at a time. You're taking one step forward, and you want to race forward. You want to work late into the evenings, wake up early and get to work, and you'll end up burning out. And I've burnt out many times in my career, or even through building the YouTube channel. And I've learned every day it's about taking one step. That consistency is way more important than quickly switching to you know, like full all out mode where you're just burning out, you know, going to sleep late, waking up early and just pushing forward. It's better to take things step by step and enjoy life as you go along, enjoy the journey, right? Rather than just chasing the destination. So I wanted to kind of start with that because it really stood out to me. Next up, I want to move to this tab. Hopefully this works. Yeah. So 94% of Gen Z want to hit their financial independence before 55, right? I can see there are 9 people watching right now. If you leave a comment, I just want to see the comments are working. Just say hi in the comments. Let me put hi in the comments. Hi. Let me know if you can see this. Let me know if you can hear me and you can see me. I'm not sure how it works. I can't see your comments right now, but I can see my comments in the tool I'm using. Yes. Hi, Vince Wedde. Okay, I want to reach that by 37. Yeah, Vince, we're gonna get you there ASAP. Let's go. So Vince is a client I'm working with. So let me continue with this. Now, 94% of Gen Z want to hit financial independence before 55, and they're planning to use their side hustles to get there. So I want to go through this briefly, but one thing I want to do is add this to the stream. Just give me 1 second. I want to add the poll to the stream. 1 second. Okay, I'm not sure how it works. I thought I'd be able to add a poll to the stream, but it doesn't seem to have that option here. I'll have to make a note of that and try and search how to make that work. Because what I was going to do actually is ask you in terms of this particular headline, right? Like 94% of Gen Z want to hit their financial independence before 55, and they're preferring side hustles over 9 to 5. Is your main income over the long term? What do you think your preference would be? Do you want it to be a side hustle, or do you want to just focus on your main income, saving and investing that, and you'll be able to take it to the next step through planning on your side hustle? Like, what is going to be your key to financial freedom? Because for some people, it will be a high paying corporate job, high paying office job, or even in the trades. And then what you're planning on doing is taking that money and investing it so you can retire early. Whereas for other people, they realize, well, maybe that main income is not going to take them where they want to go. So what they need to do is essentially focus on a side hustle while working your average 9 to 5. And then that side hustle will take them there. So let me know in the comments, where do you want to go in terms of your long-term goals? Will it be focusing on your main job or a side income? Which one do you think will get you to that financial freedom goal? So yeah, go through this in a lot of detail, because what it says here actually as the sub headline here, there's a Gen Z stare. And I don't know if you've seen the meme that's gone viral about this on several boomer news sites, where they're talking about how Gen Z are staring blankly into space when they're working their jobs. They're not even focusing on their work. But I think if Gen Z kind of know that, this is not really going anywhere. They're just earning enough money to live. They're not earning enough money to actually live a good life. And, that's what we see right now in this particular. Okay, I see Arvind, shout out to you in the chat, still learning how this works. I want to add a poll, but I don't know, I'll figure that out later. But anyway, so let's get back to this. The whole point here is what is going on in society, where many people are just like, look, I see the system's rigged. I want to find an exit plan. And some people, exit plan is moving abroad. It's having a side hustle and things like that. And what's interesting is how broad that is. Because if you're on the internet, you might think, oh, it's a small niche thing. People thinking about a side hustle or a YouTube channel, or they're thinking about maybe setting up different aspects of their life that would be different, maybe having a freelancing type of business on the side, but it's kind of gone mainstream completely. And this is interesting because it's Business Insider Africa, right? And it's like basically globally, many people can say, look, if I stick on the 9 to 5 route, even if I do all the right things, say all the right things, it's not actually going to work out, right? And this goes back to being more in control of your finances, says an individual. And it goes back to a trend where they're talking about trust is deteriorating in the big financial systems and the big banks. And of course, you know my background, you know where I've worked. Let me zoom into this a bit. So what it's saying is that, you know, there's a deteriorating trust in the standard 9 to 5. There's deteriorating trust in how the system works, right? And you can see how shaky things are, the social instability. If you're in the UK, you know, there are protests that have been going on, protests that are planned actually for in the next 3 or 4 weeks. There's going to be another big protest about migration and things like that. And the whole point is there are lots of things going on in terms of instability in terms of the 9 to 5, in terms of day-to-day life, and people are always looking for an exit plan, whatever that exit plan is. We know some of the some women might be on online platforms and content creators like OF and things like that, and then there's other guys who are thinking, you know, for example, I don't know about this particular channel, but she's talking about the shoe game. I know some people who are, selling sneakers. This is what they're saying. She now sells millions of dollars worth of sneakers and streetwear and things like that. So people are looking at other things. Shall I sell Pokemon cards? Shall I sell sneakers? Any little thing that is going to help them, drag them out of the depression that comes with inflation and not being able to live a good quality of life. So that's what you see here, right, throughout this article. Now I'm going to move on to some other topics here that are quite interesting. We're going to move on to one of the main topics. Share this tab. Okay. So this is going to be the first clip we're going to go through. So a lot of the things is we have layoff statistics, right? Layoff statistics where people think, okay, are the layoff statistics real, right? And I'm going to focus on America, but this really applies globally, right? We have all these layoff statistics that come up, how many people are unemployed. And when you look around in daily life, let me just tell you, in London, for example, I look around in daily life and I see kind of weird trends. There's loads of people living on government benefits of all demographics, right? Not just one demographic. I know a lot of people think about migrants coming to the West and getting free handouts. There's even white British people who are living on benefits. And I see so many people out and about during the day. I can't imagine they're all self-employed or they're all working odd hours, like working the night shift. So they've got time during the day to spend time with their kids, or just walking around, hanging about. There's so many people hanging about during the day where I'm just very suspicious, like how many people are actually getting government handouts, how many people are unemployed and just living paycheck to paycheck or just doing whatever they want, living on savings. And I think there is a large proportion of people who are, you know, unemployed compared to what the statistics say. Now, what we're going to do is look through this particular instance where in America, the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, were submitting monthly job numbers. You know, how many people are unemployed, how many people are in the workforce, all these type of things. How well is the economy doing, right? And this is what is an indication for investors. Should they be investing more in the, you know, retail sector based on many people being employed, or less people are being employed? Maybe they need to invest in safer investments. And the thing is, all the statistics are rigged, right? We know the inflation statistics could be rigged. I'll just say could be rigged. So we know the unemployment numbers could be rigged, because if we look at the real statistics of how bad the economy is, of course, that will depress all the investment numbers, right? And, you know, you'd have more economic instability. So there's an incentive for governments to make things look better than they are, right? Whether it's for political reasons or it's to maintain the fake economic stability that we don't actually have, with the money becoming worthless, more and more people become unemployed or dropping out the labor force in one way, shape or form. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Now we're going to look at this brief clip here. William says, in the current, let me put it on the screen. If the current economic trends continue, the idea of retirement will die with the baby boomers. Yeah, I think that is already done. I think there's a reason, I'm going to word this carefully. There's a reason why in Canada you have made the mutual assistance in, you know, if you would like to delete yourself, things like that. That's already kind of been normalized in places like Canada. In the UK, they had a similar vote where, you know, if you're older, you have a health issue and you'd like to, you know, conclude your life, they're giving you options to make it more accessible. And I think this system does not want many people to be, you know, into the older age, relying on government benefits or handouts, however that would be, right, through a pension. So I think if you want to have retirement early or even enjoy retirement and live a longer, healthy life, you've got to be able to, you know, find that kind of financial freedom, whatever that would be. And it could be a balance of online income and moving abroad. It could be just simply working a stable 9 to 5 and living in a very modest lifestyle, like a smaller home to live in rather than a bigger house. There has to be some kind of exit plan you have, that because the system's not going to give you a fair deal. And I'm convinced, even like we're in 2025 and people make the joke online, you might see in right-wing spaces where they say, it's 2025, we don't have flying cars, right? But we have gender pronouns, right? And they're just pointing out how ridiculous things can be. And the point I'm making there is, I always think about how many, like how much poison there is in the system, right? Whether it's the poisonous water supply or the pesticides and things in the food, you think everything would be organic at this point in human development. But all of this is basically to get rid of you before your time is done, right? They don't want you to live a healthy, prosperous, wealthy life. They want to exploit you like a battery in the Matrix. If you remember the Matrix movie, there's tons of humans and babies who are in these like containers, and they're like batteries, and they're trying to use up your battery before your time is gone, right? At the front end, they're making money from selling you unhealthy food, unhealthy lifestyles, credit cards, things like that. And they make money from the interest from your just spending money quickly without thinking through. And then at the back end, they make money from all the health issues that creates, right? All the debt it creates, right? And the interest payments. So it's like they're trying to exploit you at both ends. So we're going to look through this little clip and see what we can learn from this very short clip. I hope the sound works fine. I'm going to check. Let me know if you can hear this.
Late last week, President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after they released their quarterly jobs report. The BLS, which is primarily responsible for collecting and presenting job market data, presented a report that was less than flattering about the current state of the economy for average workers. In response, the president claimed that he had issues with the economic numbers for a long time, and that he believed the recent report was phony. Now, hot take alert, but he is most likely absolutely right, just not in the way that he thinks. The July report estimated that the economy had added an extra 73,000 jobs, which was already below expectations. But the real news was that when the BLS ran the numbers again, they realized that they had overestimated May's job creation by 125,000 and June's by 133,000. That means that more than 250,000 jobs that we thought existed never did. And that was just over 2 months.
Okay, so I think the audio worked fine. That is my first time playing a clip on the live stream, and I just wanted to make sure it works fine because there's a bit of a tech issue where it doesn't tell me, how the audio matches with my voice versus the clip. But it looks like you can hear this. We're going to dig into this in a bit of detail, but let me go through Nino's little comment. They say they need to raise retirement age due to too many people living long. But how many people do you know who live past 65? Practically no one. I have some family members who are living past 65. I think, thank you, Arvin, for confirming the sound is fine. I do appreciate that. Nino. So Nino, let me think about this. So I think, well, I guess it depends where you're based. I'm not sure where you're based, Nino. If you want to share which country you're in, it's up to you. But I think there's a fair few people living in retirement age, and there's lots of statistics that have been around for decades that, for example, with the UK and the US and other countries, because they're not reproducing as much and the birth rate is so low because the system deliberately crashed the birth rate through the social programs to kind of deter men and women forming healthy relationships and having families, you're going to have an aging population, and there will be more dependent on the state and the pension system. But I don't think the system can go on for too long, depending with so many people dependent on the system. You have migrants coming in, getting free handouts. You have the older generation getting their pensions. You have more and more, like, for example, single mothers or unemployed people who are getting handouts. There's such a big state. Oh, you're in Chicago. Okay, sure. I'm not sure the exact state of what's going on in Chicago, but I think generally speaking, there are increasing numbers of old people. You'll see more and more things like Japan, right, where you've got not many people having kids, but more and more older people. And the difference between, say, the West and Japan is you have many migrants coming in who are going to be either working low-skill labor, working for lower pay, which will suppress wages generally. And you're going to have also, you're just not going to have as many. I don't know what's going to happen. The only way I can see it realistically playing out is more social instability, because I can't imagine this just can't go on forever. You can't have this many handouts. You can't have this many people being laid off. And I don't want to go into it too much on this platform, but, disagreements between different races and religions and ethnic groups, which you see in the UK, and the censorship from the government because you can't talk about it. So, yeah, it's just going to become, the way I see it is, you're going to have two choices, really, everyone, right? You're going to get dragged into the political debates and the social instability, which isn't a good use of your time, or you can just focus on your financial freedom and kind of turning a blind eye to all the negative news. Of course, you need to maintain your stability when there are protests out in the street and people venting their grievances. But what you need to be able to do is kind of switch your mind back to what is your exit plan, right? Whether it's, like I say, financial freedom, focusing on your health. So that's what I try to, I only check in with the news a couple of times, catch up on it for the purpose of my live stream and my videos. But it's always about, you know, focusing on the exit plan rather than just being caught up in the news. The old people that lived long are the ones with the old system pensions that allowed them to retire at 55 with 2 government pensions. So that's a fair point. Yeah. You know, it's crazy because I know people on pension schemes who are older at 70 years old or more, and they actually are making almost the same amount of money in their pension payments that they were in their job, right? So they're on like a 3K pension, $3,000 a month rough pension, right? So, which is quite high for a pensioner. Depends on where you are, but these are people based in London because they work government jobs. They work there for decades and decades. And, you know, it's quite a lot of money for many people compared to pensioners. And if you compare to other pensioners, and also in addition to that, what you've got is you've got people who are essentially, you know, the pension age people, they don't have to pay for their mortgages, of course, right? They've probably paid off their mortgage. So they have a very low cost lifestyle and they're making a ton of money through their pension in many cases. But I agree, it's going to get difficult for everyone. Let's switch to this tab and zoom in. This is quite funny because I know many people, if you watch my channel, are probably a bit more critical of the left wing. But what we have here is Trump, which appears to be, you know, speculation, alleged, however we want to word it. Trump kind of trying to rig the statistics. And we don't know if he's being honest or not here. You just can't tell because everything's so fake now. What happened was there was the labor statistics that were announced on a monthly basis. And he says they're basically making the economy look worse than it is. And he got rid of this individual who is organizing the labor statistics of unemployment numbers and the labor reports, and says, oh, this is kind of a left-wing person. They're one of the Democrat supporters. We can't trust them. I'm going to get rid of them and hire my guy in. So it's like, okay, well, he's saying, well, before they were rigging the statistics in favor of the Democrats and making the economy look good. Now I'm in charge as Trump. The economy's looking bad based on these labor statistics. So I'm going to get rid of them and put in my stooge in, my Republican kind of guy, which we'll go into in a second. And I'll get rid of this person because they're not making me look good. They're not making the economy look good. So this is like a real interesting thing where it's like, how can you trust anything now? Because it reminds me of like the Stalin dictatorship, or, you know, Lenin, if you remember learning about communism and socialism in Russia. They would just get whoever was their friends into positions of leadership and rig all the statistics to make the economy look good. People feel like they have less and less money. And then it's like, oh no, let's get the guy to put out the news that, oh, the economy is doing well and we're building all these social programs and all these new infrastructure and people are getting hired. So, you know, you just don't believe your lying eyes. And there's a term I will put in the chat right now. I'm sure some of you will know about this and the documentary. Let me know if you know about this. This is quite interesting. Hypernormalization. Now, Hypernormalization is a documentary by Adam Curtis. Adam Curtis is the guy. If you want to understand how rigged the system is, how fake it is, he has many documentaries on this, whether it was the conflict that we've seen in the world in the Middle East and how, you know, American governments might be misleading us about how the world works. But what he talks about in this specific documentary, let me put it on the screen right now. Hypernormalization is like a 3-part documentary. He talks about how everything's becoming more and more fake and we all have to pretend it's real, like it's the socialist or communist Russia. It's like this fake statistics. You know how the youth are getting dumber and dumber, but they make it easier for them to get top grades, like getting an A or A star or B plus or getting high grades is now easier than it used to be. So, but each generation is getting dumber. They've just made it easier to make it feel like, oh, everyone's getting smarter or things are improving, but you know everything's getting worse. But you just have to pretend it's getting better because the statistics that are rigged make it look like it's getting better. William says the elites are banking on AI taking over a lot of jobs. On the flip side, if employees are replaced with AI, who will have the money to buy from these corporations? Yeah, and I think there's different theories there. Could they introduce UBI, universal basic income? I'm going to say something, and I have to word this so carefully, but I thought that post the whole 2020 situation, I think they were expecting, for whatever reason, a lot of people not to be here anymore, and that would be easier when they were rolling out AI. Now they've rolled out AI, and they're going to continue rolling it out, but I think they were thinking, oh, well, hopefully there would have been a massive depopulation event in the last few years before we rolled out AI, but now we have AI and lots of people are still here. They haven't, unfortunately, passed away. They're actually still alive. And so you've got, in a sense, compared to what they want, they've got overpopulation and implementing AI at the same time rather than depopulation and implementing AI. So you've got a bit of a conflict there. But I'm going to be careful around that topic, and I'm going to get back on with what we have on the screen right now. So here we have a case where, like I said, the job statistics are fake. And, if you're trusting them, you're kind of going to be blindsided, right? Companies and governments are, always looking to protect themselves. And they're not looking to protect you, right? So you've got to build a real career security for yourself and freedom by taking control of your future. Now, this is what I tried to do through my coaching program, which you've seen linked. I clicked the wrong button. 1 second. Present. Share screen. There you go. So you got my coaching program there. There's a link in description. I think it's the pinned comment here. If you want to get started to help you build a career where you can see through the lies, whether it's in your career, whether it's also dealing with different dynamics at work, because you're going to be lied to time and time again. Things are going to get worse and worse, and they're going to say, "Oh no, you're just imagining it, right? Things are actually better than you think they are." Now let's get back to this story. So Trump was firing the labor chief statistic because they were saying it was undermining his credibility, right? And just a quick comment, I don't want to be too judgmental of the way people look, but there is a philosophy, or you might have heard about it. I'll put it in the chat. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I'll put it in the chat 1 second. Now it's loading. Cool. So Fizzenomy, which I'm not pronouncing right probably, is a very interesting theory, and it's very big on right-wing Twitter in the last few years. And it's basically, you can at least judge someone's personality to a certain extent based on the way they look, right? And I don't necessarily mean their weight, whether they're overweight or not, but based on the way they look, it's an indication of their personality based on their face. If someone has a very serious, stern face all the time, it's probably because they are a serious person, or they're putting up a strong guarded layer. If someone has a face like this, it's like, what personality type is this? And it's the kind of typical Karen or mother hen you see in the office. Maybe the older kind of middle-aged woman who's, the controlling type of mother-in-law type of personality, the busybody, gossiping, controlling, telling everyone what to do, and maybe clearly not having any self-control themselves. So that's the type of person that was in charge of this labor statistics department. So it's just interesting to me, right? Because it comes across like that typical Democrat enforcing the politically correct opinion personality type. Now, before I move on, because this obviously is a career channel, we're talking about the economy here. I think this mother hen stereotype is quite common in the office, right? It's kind of the person who hovers over yourself as an employee, offering constant reminders, unsolicited life advice, and kind of protective. And sometimes they can be a good person that can kind of be helpful, like the mother personality in the maternal instinct in the workplace. But a lot of the times they can be a busybody, getting involved and trying to be unnecessarily intervening. It's like the auntie who always wants to know you about your personal life, and you're like, oh, I don't really want to discuss it with you. So these type of people can be micromanagers rather than letting you take control of your own workload. It can create resentment because they're trying to baby you, even though you're an adult, and they can slow efficiency because they're always focused on nurturing and playing that motherly character, right? Now, I just want to focus on a few key details here. So the former Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS commissioner, and nonpartisan economic groups have criticized Donald Trump shock firing of BLS Commissioner Erica McIntyre after the July job reports. Let me zoom in a bit. Because it revealed that jobs growth was slower over the summer. Trump, without evidence to back his claims, alleged that she was faking the employment numbers in the run-up to the election to make Kamala Harris look better than she was. And he says the recent data was rigged to make Republicans and Trump look bad. So if we just scroll down, what it says here is under the law, this is quite funny. I mean, this is clown world, right? I'll put this in the chat too. I'm sure many of you know this meme. This is where we are. Like, it's 2025 and you think they'd have at least realistic statistics on how many people are employed, but you can't even rely on that. It's like, what can you actually rely on this system to do? Under the law, disliking the data is not a qualifying reason to remove the commissioner from her 4-year appointment. Under our democracy, it's unacceptable to fire someone for publishing data collected in accordance with scientific standards, says the Association of Public Data Users. And they want the Congress to respond immediately and investigate the factors that led to this person's removal and strongly urge BLS commissioners' continued service. So to be non-partisan, right, to maintain integrity. And I don't really believe the left or the right. I believe they'll just rig it in favor of whoever is in charge and whoever wants to look the best, right? And of course, when you have a government entity like the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, even in the West, even in the UK, any country, typically you're going to have left-leaning people in a lot of these government roles. So it makes sense they might want to make the right wing look bad or make Trump look bad. So what we can see here, right, he didn't like the statistics. He wanted someone else to fix the numbers. And yeah, like I say, I think the numbers will be rigged the other way. It'll make things look better than they actually are. And I think, you know, what standards can you rely on, right? You can't rely on the science anymore. You can't trust your doctors anymore. They might be lying, as people might suspect. They've been lying over the last 5 years about a lot of things. Can you trust the science when it comes to the environment? Obviously, there's propaganda around what the weather should be and or what's causing the change of the weather, which I can't even get into now. So it's kind of ridiculous, right? It's like no institution can be trusted. And that's another idea that I covered throughout my channel, which is IYI, intellectual yet idiot, which is a term that came up with from Nassim Taleb, which is, you know, you have all these intellectuals in the right position of power telling you how to act, how to behave, what to believe. But a lot of these are idiots because they don't have common sense and they're so focused on statistics versus reality. And of course, a lot of the educational class or academia or even these departments like this, they're run by, you know, establishment figures who want to have certain opinions, positive or negative, to be put out there. So you can't really trust them. We're going to move on to the next article. Share this tab. There we go. Before I go through this, so this is the new guy in charge, right? So this is the Trump stooge, and nothing wrong with this guy. And you could probably listen to my channel and say, well, maybe I do prefer Trump over the alternatives. But I mean, this is just another stooge. Let me go through the comments right now. So I agree 100%. Ugly people are evil. In all seriousness, we subconsciously know a lot about a person based on their looks, and 100% like believe that. I try not to be too judgmental because, you know, someone could be going through a difficult time in their lives. They might gain weight or lose weight. They might appear happy or sad in general, depending on what their personal circumstances are at that point, but or during that time period in their life. So sometimes it can be a bit difficult, but there is a general idea. Like if we look at this guy, I mean, this guy, the way he looks, he reminds me of the way J.D. Vance looks, or a lot of the other, you know, there's a phrase out there. Let me put it in the chat. There's a phrase out there called Instagram face. And this is typically when women might be getting fillers and things like that in their face, you know, or lip filler or Botox, and they have a particular look, like the Kim Kardashian face, the Lauren Sanchez face, which I think is the wife of Jeff Bezos. And that's a particular look, particular personality type. And then private equity face, which I kind of came up with, but people have just been covering it recently, is whereby you know, there's Emmanuel Macron, Justin Trudeau, some of these people who are in charge, they have a particular look about them. It's like they're establishment stooges, right? And that's what I see about this guy. I don't see a man of virtue or honor. It's just like he's the suit and tie guy who's going to parrot whatever the establishment wants, right? And this reminds me of J.D. Vance and people like that. So, yeah, I definitely think we can judge people on the way they look. Arvind says right or left doesn't matter for us peasants. I think there's some truth to that. I think culturally there is some slight differences between them, and obviously the right might be more favorable to men in certain ways, but they're two sides of the same coin. And without getting too much into conspiracies and things, you know, there is an argument to be said where they're basically both pushing in the same direction, right? Like the left might want CBDCs, and then the right wants CBDCs through another way, through Elon Musk and, you know, using X as a payment platform. So it's like they're kind of both at a very high level, you know, they're both two sides of the same coin. There's another term for this. I don't want to go too long into political philosophy, but there's a term called Hegelian dialectic, which is essentially like problem, reaction, solution, where, you know, you're offered two options, but they lead to the same outcome at the end. Now, someone saying, sup, Ethan, didn't know you do live streams. Yeah, this is my first live stream. I plan on doing it at this time every Friday. And next few weeks, I'm going to cover AI, which is going to be quite interesting. It's going to be quite funny, but I've got lots of different views because there's so many statistics. Some people say AI is taking away jobs from women, and some people say AI is taking jobs from men. And again, like, you can't really trust the statistics. It depends on what the reality is around you. But we're going to cover that in future videos. Now, Adam, last comment before I get back to this, and then I'll review the comments again in a few minutes. But let's go through Adam. Thanks for the donation. Adam A says, do you have advice for co-owners of small companies? I do software. I make good money, but maybe I should pivot to Meta, or am I doomed to my own company? It's hard to know all the details. If you want to message me directly, there's a link, there's a pinned comment, there's a link in description to my coaching, and I have like an initial introductory call. I would say do everything you can, in my opinion, to be your own boss, particularly as a man. We've got a woman in the comments too. Shout out to Penny. I think the way this system's going, and I'm going to put another interesting few phrases for you to consider. Cottage industries, parallel economy. I'm going to explain this right now. I'm not spelling this right. Parallel. One second. Parallel. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to get the spelling right, but I did this quickly. So let me explain a few things to you. So a lot of people watch my channel. The thing is, you're kind of getting a bit fed up with the corporate environment, and I help my clients navigate through that and look at side income sources for themselves. And this is quite important because a lot of people think, well, oh, I have to work for a company forever. That's how it's always worked. And I was thinking about this morning, actually, when I was going for a long walk. Actually, big corporations are relatively new, right? They've been around for let's just say the last 100 years. And you can say, okay, I agree. Hey, Penny, I'm going to get to your comment. Definitely. Give me a moment. Shout out to you, Penny. I'm going to get back to you. Just wait a moment. Let me get through this. It's going to help everyone. So, sure. Just give me some time to explain this. So, firstly, you make good money, and should you pivot? What I was going to say is, what has existed for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years before these big corporations that run everyone's life and tell you whether you can, you know, make money or not, or they want to ban you from a bank or whatever. What has existed long before that is something called cottage industries. And I studied economic history, so I know a lot about these type of things, where you have very small niche people who are experts. You know, we know in the past we had like local bakers, farmers, butchers, things like that. And I think that is, even people who would make clothes in their homes and sell those, that kind of niche, small type of businesses. And I'm sure many of you know of things like Etsy and things like that. And I actually buy some clothes from Etsy, right? Small owned stores, clothes, jewelry, etc. And I think the long-term strategy, as more and more people are getting fed up with the system, they're looking for alternatives. What you want to do is essentially be able to focus on how you can do something that's kind of niche, that that works for you. And in case of Adam, I would say, yeah, definitely focus on doing your own thing and building that niche out, because people increasingly every day I see it, they want to support the independent coffee shop. They want to support the lone guy by himself. Maybe it's a software company, things like that. It is quite very big on Twitter. I just want to mention that I don't know if you'd like all of these type of things, but I'll just explain it now. There's something called right-wing Twitter or money Twitter, where people typically in the health niche focus on, alternative health solutions, wellness solutions, and things like that. And I'd always focus on those type of niche aspects. So many independent authors and magazine providers and things like that. So I would always look for forming that small niche audience or that niche business niche that would work for you, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to be doomed to work for a mega corporation forever. Many people are not putting in the effort to look for the alternative. So the fact that you are doing your own thing in your own software niche, whatever that would be, I think that's a good idea. Let's go through the comments before I get through everything else. Arvin says, neither one has released a list. I know what list you're referring to, the E-list with the island and the weirdos. And we all have to pay taxes. Yeah. There's a lot of blackmail being done to major politicians and celebrities. And, they've got video recordings of celebrities doing weird things. And then they all have to parrot the same opinions, and lots of conspiracy theories there. Certain celebrities who passed away under suspicious circumstances of overdosing on substances, which are highly suspect. I think a lot of top celebrities and politicians have been subject to some form of blackmail, and that's why they have certain opinions, and they all seem to go in the same direction. Even if you vote for someone who's going to be the outsider, like Trump, if you like him, and then he turns out to just do the same thing that the left wing would have done, or things you wouldn't have expected him to do. The other thing I would say is, you can't really put too much trust in politicians. And I also think, a lot of people, and I'm going to mention someone you might know, Star from the Star Report, Troy Terrain, who was quite a big guy in New York media, New York hip hop type of content. And he got blackballed and kicked out the industry because he would stand up for himself. And he said many times, I'll just say alleged and speculation, where there'd be celebrities or top rappers and top music artists. They would go to a industry party and they wouldn't be doing anything inappropriate. They might be drinking something, and then someone spikes their drink, like a Diddy party, and then does things to them and records it. And then obviously they're like, what can I do? And then on tape, they have them doing all types of questionable, compromising things. And they'll have to sign a record contract to basically be a slave to a record, a recording artist, a recording label, like Sony Records, UMG, or whatever, Atlantic Records. And they're basically a slave because they're subject to blackmail. And I'm sure the same thing happens to politicians and things like that. So we're going to move on to a few other comments. Cottage industry. So cottage industries and parallel economy is what I was explaining there, where look at alternatives. Shout out to Penny here. So Penny, I'm a woman, but I'm from a Black background, maybe African American. I don't know if you're in the UK. We're subject to white woman's behavior. It's chaos, and yeah, and I agree with this. I really think it's so interesting, because I think about this a lot, like different demographics, and I don't think everything should be about race and gender and things like that, but it's very real, because I think, and I'll have to word this so carefully, I don't know how to word this, but if you have different racial demographics competing in the workplace environment, it's hard to describe what I'm going to describe without sounding like making generalizations about different demographics. But I'm thinking that, to put it as nicely as I can, the reason why white women are in the position they're in, that specialized, privileged position, is because liberal white men have given them that favoritism. And you see it every day in the office. You see it with them giving them special treatment. So that's the reason why they're there. But I think every other demographic, whether it's Black women, Asian men, in some cases more right-wing leaning conservative white men, notice this bias, right? And I think we all react to it differently. I noticed many Black women I work with would notice that, right? And when I was working at some investment banks at the start of my career and towards the end of my time in an investment bank, like a decade after that, I could pick up on the signs. Like Black women definitely can sense the bias favoring white women, and they can definitely, they can sense it. And I know when you're around people, you can pick up on people's body language, and they're like rolling their eyes and they can see the bias there. And I remember, for example, at one of my time at an investment bank, I had a black female manager who's actually from America, and she was chill. There wasn't too many issues, but I realized that she was kind of getting fed up, and she kind of leveraged the, sickness policy to kind of take some time off work. And I could pick up on the signs. She was kind of frustrated that they were kind of not giving her, I would say, fair treatment. And I wouldn't say it was necessarily racial bias, because it was just white women sticking together to benefit themselves, not even to benefit other white men, right? Because they will always jump on whatever trend kind of benefits them, which could be, the BLM thing. They might not know much about BLM, but it's just a trending thing, or the rainbow flag month, they would support that, whatever's the politically correct agenda to support. So thank you, Penny, for being here. I know I'm kind of critical of women sometimes on my channel, but obviously not all women, just certain instances where I've worked with certain people. Etsy, I'm sure a lot of you know Etsy. It's a bit like an alternative to Amazon, and people sell their, whatever product they want to sell, their jewelry, clothing, things like that. It's worthwhile supporting people there, like if you want something niche. Adam A, thank you. Yeah, I really think this is kind of important for a lot of you to know. I think, if you keep up with hip hop, if you keep up with whatever music culture you might be interested in, I do find it a bit weird how like a Leonardo DiCaprio does a whole documentary or two about the environment and the climate and things like that. I'm like, does this guy really care when he's taking a private jet every day? No, he's been told, based on blackmail, based on whatever agenda, they has to parrot that opinion. Then you've got, bro, please do a collab with this guy. I'm going to star this comment so I can come to it later, hopefully. Masculinity Rocks, Mick and Professor. Yeah, let me look into that later. Let's get back to this guy on the screen right now. So this is EJ Antonio from the Heritage Foundation. Now, again, it's up to you what you want to look into, but I don't know if you know the Heritage Foundation. They're an extremely influential, powerful, right-wing like think tank. Yeah. And a lot of the ideas and the research of what's going to hit with people, what's going to get a good reaction out of people, is coming from the Heritage Foundation. Now you have left-wing and right-wing think tanks. And there's certain names I can't mention here, but you might know someone with the last name Fuentes. I won't go into him in any more detail here because there's not allowed discussions around him too much here. But, they were kind of targeting him and kept kicking him out. But a lot of the normie conservatives that parrot or whatever opinion Trump wants them to parrot, they actually, work in alignment with this. They're very powerful. So essentially, this guy's been put in charge. So Heritage Foundation guy, EJ Antonio, is chosen on Monday by President Trump to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics, to have these traditional monthly reports. So he's questioning the accuracy of the monthly reports. He's saying that it is a key economic indicator for investors and economists to rely for the health of the US labor market, right? And this is kind of going back to what I'm saying, right? So many things are dependent on how companies invest, right? And it depends on these statistics. Now, even if you're investing for your own basis, you're thinking, should I invest in the American stock market or invest in, let's just say, the Chinese stock market? You have to look at things. You have to look at statistics and numbers. What are the employment statistics? Do you want to invest, for example, in Tesla stock, or do you want to invest in, local shopping malls? But if you've got all these statistics saying, oh, the employment numbers are good, consumer confidence is high, people are buying a lot of products, and then all of a sudden the statistics are fake and you make the wrong investment, then obviously the numbers shouldn't be fake. So you don't have to, deal with these type of instances. Here he says, how on earth are business supposed to plan, or how are the Fed supposed to conduct monetary policy when we don't know how many jobs are being added or lost in the economy? But now, in my opinion, it's going to go from, like I say, being overly negative about job numbers to overly positive. So it's like, well, how can you really trust it either way? And that's the kind of dynamic we're dealing with here. Let me just see if there's anything else here to go through. Nope. I think we've got to go through the next article. share this tab. You can see my tab. Yeah. So of course, Guardian is more left-wing leaning outlet. So they're going to be anti-Trump. So they're going to present an alternative perspective, which is fine. And they're going through, oh, well, actually, he wants to manipulate the data his way. What is quite funny about this image is Trump is holding up some sign and it shows the BLS is overestimating Biden's economy by nearly 1.5 million. So they're saying that, you know, based on the statistics that he has, he's saying essentially the statistics are rigged the other way, right? And they're making Biden's economy look better than his economy. I think what you got to do in life, like I mentioned about me walking around earlier and sensing what's going on around me, what do I have from maybe friends or family or different contacts, what's actually going on in the economy. And the way I'd see it is lots of people are struggling a lot more than you think they would. You know, obviously people are not going to go out shouting about, you know, being unemployed, or the same way they wouldn't shout about if they had a successful investment. People are keeping a low profile. They're going to make things seem normal. There's probably many people, you know, on a daily basis who are dealing with unemployment and they're not going to tell you, right? Like family members who are just going to pretend like things are normal. Maybe they're working from home when they're actually searching for their next job. So you never really know what's actually going on here. And then we're going to move on to this next article. Yeah, and what he's saying is essentially like firing people because, you know, they have weak job reports. So I don't want to go through it in too much detail. There is one more little quote here. 1 second. So it says here, while the US jobs report Friday was surprisingly bad, sending the US equities, bond yields, and dollar sharply lower, the reason behind the labor market developments have been pretty easy to see. What remains murkier is how politics such as President Trump pressure campaign on the statistics result in the economy and market going down in the future. So again, like people are having a difficult time telling, you know, how this is going to impact the market because they can't really trust the statistics. And it goes on here. 1 second. Alongside immigration, the administration's efforts to increase government efficiency, which has emphasized cutting the number of government employees, also helps explain recent labor market trends. Government workers deciding to retire may be contributing to a slowing labor supply. And certainly the job cuts influence total monthly payrolls, right? And what it's essentially saying here is there's many factors here that are causing potentially higher unemployment, right? We can't just blame everything on AI. That's one thing I want you to pick up on is we can't say, oh, it's all AI or it's all the migrants taking up all the jobs. You know, we have a general slowing market. We have a general recession. We have many people who are, you know, deciding to opt out the workforce or looking at alternatives. There's many things going on here. It's not just AI. It's quite a murky image that we're dealing with. So let me know if you got any comments on this. What do you think about the government statistics? Do you think we can trust the numbers? Do you think they're all fake? If you go back and look at this this diagram, we can't really tell, right, what's actually going on in the economy right now. And this is what I mean. Before we move on to the second section, like I said, when we're dealing with this unclear job market, unclear reality of what's going on, if you want to kind of focus on your future and build power, pay, and freedom rather than getting caught up in politics and civil unrest like we see going on like all over, like I can help you improve your personal situation through career coaching. So Arvin says, you know, it's crazy, but today it feels like ABA, always be applying. Yeah, I don't know if I made that phrase or other people I've seen use something similar. It makes sense to always be applying, right? And I think, you know, that can lead to burnout. But I would say this is my general guidance on that particular point. When you start a job, and it depends on how things are going, of course, you know, if you spend your first year kind of settling in and doing a good job, don't burn yourself out and do too much. Obviously, you want to pass the probation period, you want to do an okay job. So you do that for the time being, for the first year. Then the second year, you really prove yourself. And then you do that in the second and the third year and see if they're going to give you a decent pay rise, a decent promotion. But if you're coming close to the third year and there's no real sign of we're going to look out for you and give you a decent pay rise, especially now inflation is high, you want to be getting decent pay rises, then it's time to just start job hopping. So I think that's good to look out for, but also look for instability. If you're seeing signs, which I've got coming up in several upcoming daily videos about layoffs, management changes, layoffs in other departments, a general quiet workload, not much work coming your way, your role is being sidelined, work is being directed to other people, that could be a sign that a layoff is coming up for you, and then you want to be applying. So just look out for the signs. But yeah, I would say 2 to 3 year mark, you should be considering alternative opportunities to job hop. Okay, we're going to move on. I see one more comment. I'm going to come to you in a second. We have show. From my view, AI was used as an excuse to dump the overpriced employees acquired from 2020. Yeah, there's many theories on AI, because the thing is, as a frequent comment on my channel, frequent theme on my channel is that, many people say that, the office is daycare for adults. And there's so many jobs you could have replaced way before AI and automation, even 6-figure salaries on major trading floors of billion-dollar investment banks where I've worked. There's people on the trading floor, they're not doing much. They're doing basic Excel macros. They're doing basic financial analysis that you can get someone in Mumbai, India to do for a third of the price or less. You can get some level of automation or just basic. You can do so many things without a lot of these people in overpriced jobs. So I think, they didn't need AI to be automatically implemented to get rid of these people. They could have done it before AI. You could have done it with basic Python, basic macros in Excel. But yeah, I do think it's interesting why they decided to kind of roll out AI now. Now, maybe it is to get rid of the employees, like you say, that they overhired during 2020. But I think they could have done that anyway. So much of the economy is fake. And even if we talk about AI in the tech sector, what separates the tech industry from other industries is that what they're essentially doing is tech has a massive industry around getting people into tech jobs, which would be the tech boot camps. You don't really have finance boot camps. You don't have legal boot camps. You have obviously qualifications people complete to work there. But the tech sector has this entire economy that's based within their industry around, charging people 5, 10, 20K to learn how to code to get into that industry. So it's kind of has a bloated entry. It's kind of a barrier to entry, but also a bloated entry path where many people think, that's the place to work. You have to be in the tech sector if you want to have a high 6-figure salary. So it's kind of created its own problem in a sense. And many people have been misled to go into that industry before things kind of went sideways. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through a few points. I'm going to teach you about 100K resumes and how to really help your resume in different unique ways. And we've got a few more TikTok clips to go through alongside this. So I'm going to zoom out a bit. Okay, so one thing I want to help you do is to understand, to make the most of your situation right now. And it's unstable for many people. If you're not in the best situation right now, I wouldn't be worried and think it's just you. You want to stand out from the competition, right? And you want to make the most of the opportunity and stack your CV with a lot of skills, a lot of helpful points. And there's different ways of doing this, right? One way is, being aware of layoffs that are coming up, right? So suddenly you might have a layoff and you want to treat it as a sign for you to develop skills fast before the door is closing. And what I mean by that is if you can see, you've probably only got 1 year left at a company before maybe the layoffs start getting rolled out, you see the company shrinking, try to develop skills before it's your time to kind of leave. The other thing is around promotions, right? Sometimes you want to make sure when you're promoted to a particular level and okay, well, things might not work out long term, or how do you get promoted? Think about developing different skills, right? So you can do that to advance at your particular company or shift to another one. Now, another thing is around if you're a junior employee, right? Now, how can you kind of move from a junior employee to more senior levels? One way is to mentoring people, right? Improving your leadership that way. And this will help you, this will prevent you being seen as replaceable, because many junior people are like, how do I make it to the next level? The most simple way is to demonstrate to your management. You can actually teach and help other people at your level or slightly below your level. That's how you make it 1 or 2 steps up. The next thing is around senior employees, right? So, recognize when promotion paths are blocked, right? And you want to prepare your next move. So sometimes you reach a career ceiling, which means you can't make it to the next level. And it's kind of difficult to do that. because you see, okay, well, the next level, there's only a handful of people there. I'm kind of going to be stuck in middle management. What should I do next? And the best thing to do in that particular instance is to look to job hop. So we're going to cover that too. And there's a lack of social mobility there, right? There's lots of people who are stuck in the middle who can't make it to the next level. So if you're stuck at a particular level, it can come down to building a skill stack with targeted projects so you can escape on your terms. You know, it could be, like I say, managing junior employees or having small projects that you can manage, which will give you some skills to add to your resume to move on. Now, if we go on to avoiding burnout, we're coming on to this. 1 second. Where are we? Just give me a second here. Cool. We are going to switch to this. Share this tab. So I just want to show you a quick clip from this particular TikToker. There's no sound here. It just says that, you know, genuinely curious. Does anyone actually have a job that doesn't drain all their energy, right? That doesn't drain 80% of your personality by Friday? Seriously asking. So what you want to do is pay attention to your energy levels throughout the week, right? To avoid burnout, right? Don't just, you know, kind of show up to the job and think, you know, things are going to work out. What you want to actually be doing is thinking, how is that getting me to the next level, even if it takes a bit of time? So for example, the way I'd see it here is that you want to consider what's going on each week. That's why it's so important to have like a work journal, like just a note for yourself in your own notepad, or you have an Excel file or a Word doc, what you're doing each week and how it's bringing you to the next level. What skills did you develop that week? How it's going to help you get promoted or prepare you for the next job, which is what you're going to do in many cases, right? If we move on to this document here. Cool. So job security is kind of done, right? And we all know this. That's why we're all on the channel. I'm going to just respond to this comment here. Arvind is saying, I found that for engineering, attaching a portfolio with pictures to your resume is really good. There's something about showing your experience visually to recruiters and managers. Yeah, there's something good. Definitely also on your LinkedIn, you have like a portfolio option where you can save or show some of the work you've done. If you're in an industry like a tech industry where you can show like websites you've built and things like that, that's good. Or if you're in other industries like finance or any kind of like more industry where it's based on technical analysis, you can write a few reports to show maybe your trading analysis and things like that. That's definitely something good to show to recruiters and managers, and always have like a few examples you can bring up in interviews. I think that's great for you to do. Now, let's go back to this. So job security is kind of done, and it's important to be hyper flexible, right? And I would say, you know, this is a good rule for anyone, right? Because what you don't want to do is, firstly, you want to be hyper flexible so you can move between related roles to keep earning a lot of money without stalling your career growth. And this is what happens for a lot of people, is that they get stuck in one role. If the safe option, maybe they have a big mortgage, they just got married, they don't want to upset their financial stability when they're going through personal life change. What you want to do is move between related roles to keep your earnings stable without sabotaging your career growth. Here I've got examples that have worked for people in the finance industry, say moving between audit, which is more of a back office role, to operations, to finance, to sales, right? And the big pay rise is not between audit and operations, a slight pay bump between operations and finance, but the big pay rise is between finance and sales, right? Typically, because you're going from a support function to working in a revenue generating function, which is what sales would be here, right? So this is how you can make slow career moves that make sense. What you don't want to do is do quick wild jumps that are going to sabotage your career. This is when you make random unrelated switches that reset your progress, going from sales to trades to finance, right? I remember having a conversation with someone, just one moment. I remember having a conversation with someone who was working in sales, and they then had a friend who was working in trades like manual labor, and he switched to that because he could make decent money because he was making okay money in sales. And then from that, he wanted to switch to finance. Now you can imagine how difficult it would be to make that switch, right? If you go from being a car salesman to, you know, working as an electrician in construction, and now you want to work in private equity, that's just not going to make sense. And some people just think, well, I've got good skills and I'm a hard worker and it'll work out. But if you make these quick wild jumps, you're really sabotaging not only your career, but your financial stability, your ability to survive in this world, right? So you have to be very careful, right, with these big switches. Like the same way I wouldn't switch my YouTube channel from talking about career and finance to, I don't know, anime and manga. It just would completely tank my algorithm for my channel, right? The same way if you switched, if you're on your resume, you've got, oh, you've worked in, like I say, you've worked in construction, then you worked in finance, and then now you want to be a salesperson. It's just not going to work out. And I know you might have the contacts that might help, but there will be times where you want to go for job opportunities where you don't have the contacts. Then what are you going to do? How are you going to justify that on your resume? Thanks to JJ, almost 10K. Yeah, I'm pushing. It's crazy because I've been at 8K. I've been just above 8K followers for several months. So let me tell you about, this is how volatile it can be. You know, if you're running your own business, whatever that would be. For my YouTube channel, right? I went from, listen, I love Berserk. Vince, we should talk about it in the next channel. I love the Berserk 1997 anime series. If you're a man watching this, or woman too, but particularly if you're a man, like there's a lot of deep life lessons in the Berserk anime. I'm going to put this in the Berserk anime 1997. It's about 25 episodes worth watching. Maybe I'll cover that in a future video. Okay, a couple of things. So I want to teach you an important life lesson about having your own business, right? Because obviously I'm having my channel here. Some of you might have your own YouTube channel. In January, I went to Mexico City and I was checking my phone constantly for updates for my channel. And at the time I was getting quite good views, right? And then my views tanked a bit later and I realized, why did my views tank? And I asked someone who is a bit more of an expert on YouTube. And in January, I had many successful videos, but I covered some controversial topics, you know, people and things they might have said, you know, I don't want to mention their names here, you know, things about people who've been dealing with shadow ban when it comes to banking, things about like Kanye West and things like that, and other people like he'd interviewed or been in interviews with, and other comedians who've been a bit politically incorrect. And then my channel tanked and YouTube stopped recommending me because I was maybe mentioning topics they didn't want me to talk about. And you know, it literally halved my YouTube ad revenue, and it was kind of crazy. And then after then, you know, it picked up. And then, but what was funny there, let me tell you. So I was on the trip to Mexico City, right? And I was covering my, checking my YouTube channel, you know, while waiting for the flights. And I went from like 4,000 followers to 6,000 in about a week or so. And it was kind of crazy. And then 6,000 to 8,000 took several months, like January to like April, and then April to August, I'm still stuck above just a bit of above 8,000. Now, this is the reality. If you want to make money online, if you want to set up your own channel or maybe on Instagram or whatever, things take a lot more time than you think they would. And also you're subject to the algorithm, which you don't know what's going on in the back end. Maybe they don't like you saying things and then they decide to slow down your growth. And now some of my videos are doing well. You know, I think before when I was talking about men's issue in the workplace, they weren't recommending me now, but now they are. So you can't really control all of that. Now, I want to mention briefly, because I think this is important. Firstly, Adam, online career coaching sounds like a niche that's underrepresented. Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and hopefully this continues to go well. Brit watching here in Beijing, China. Shout out to China. I've went to Shanghai before, very developed. And yes, there's someone called the Chinese historian on YouTube who's quite funny. He's kind of based guy, Chinese guy who's living in Canada, talking about, you know, social commentary and things similar, somewhat similar to me, but more about like dating and dysfunctional social dynamics and politics and things like that. It's kind of funny. He's an interesting guy. I was going to say China's doing quite well, but his view as a Chinese person is that it looks like it's developing, but there's many other issues beneath the surface. And then Lucas says, hi, shout out to Lucas. I think we might have spoke before. I've seen your comments before. I'd watch your anime critical review of anime corporate jobs. That would be funny. Yeah, that was one of my ideas a few years ago to cover anime and the finances around anime or some of the characters there. But I want to mention this briefly about Berserk, right? I'd recommend everyone out there. I know some people will have different views on anime, think it's for losers, like playing video games. People have all these different views on anime and video games and things like that. It's up to you. But one thing I want to tell you about this particular anime, it has 25 episodes. And what it does, without giving it all away, it really sets out two clear paths between two personality types as a man, something you'd always have to deal with, which would be you have the main character called Guts, who is typically dressed in black armor, and then you have someone called Griffith, who is typically dressed in white, right? And again, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the point is, you've got Guts, who's kind of pursuing his purpose and a deeper life meaning, and he's looking for that, but he's not desperately pursuing power or money. He's just looking for like a sense of fulfillment and mastering his craft. He's a swordsman, right? And he's good at fighting, right? And then you've got Griffith, who's typically dressed in white, who you'll see in the character in the show, who's endlessly pursuing power. He's like Macbeth, if you're familiar with Shakespeare, Macbeth, and he's like pursuing power and prestige and almost controlling others and using others to his advantage. And it really kind of leads you to really think about your life, like what's going to bring you fulfillment, right? What type of personality are you, right? So definitely worth viewing and thinking about the life lessons there. So we are going to hide that. We're going to get into this now. One of the main costs of job security, as you can see at the top of this screen right now, is that the salaries suck. And if you think about government jobs, that's where you have the most job security. You maybe have more time off compared to people working corporate jobs. You have stable hours. They're not going to ask you to work late in some of these jobs. They'll have more of a stable work environment. I know people who work government jobs, they really don't make good money, but it's just stable. They have the stable life they want. They can spend time with their friends in the evening. They're always finishing work at 5. You know what's funny? I know people who work at government financial regulators. In the UK, we have the FCA. In the US, you have the SEC, the CFTC, and I know people who work there, and they're like, yeah, we're just pretending to work half the time, and they're making, decent money for a government job because they're a financial regulator. And what they end up doing is just pretending to work. So much of a government job is pretending to work. And I knew someone else who was working in the office at a government job, and then they got to work from home, and they would just, be tapping their keyboard. They had a long stick. They would be resting in their bed, and they would tap their keyboard with a stick on the space bar just to keep it active, like they are working when they're not. So this is how funny government jobs are. The pay is low, but it'll give you the stability. And the point I'm making here is that if you want to have a successful side hustle, sometimes you do need the time to build that on the side. And how can you get that time while getting paid? Is working a trash government job, working a pointless low paying job that is going to give you all the time in the world to do what you want. You can work on while you're on the job, researching things for your side business. In the evening, you can have your full evening. You're not going to be working a corporate job where you're coming home at 7 p.m 8 p.m and you've got no energy apart from watching Netflix and going to sleep. That's when you would want to go for a stable job. Now, we've got 2 headlines here. Job hopping isn't a red flag anymore. It's a life strategy. Many young workers are job hopping. This is a headline here. The second thing is UK professionals are seeking new jobs amidst stagnant salaries. Now, why am I pointing that out? Firstly, Vince, I'm not familiar with that one. I've made a note of that in my streaming tool. I'll look into Bro Today. I haven't had that. So let me go into this though. Job hopping, right? I know it's more and more people are dealing with layoffs. So there's more and more people with lower tenure, which means less time worked to each company, and there's less judgment around it because many people are being laid off for no real good reason. So there's less and less loyalty. It's no longer a sign so much that you're a disloyal, lazy worker. You can't keep a job because so many people are dealing with layoffs. So if you have your resume, of course, aim to work for a company, like I say, 2 to 3 years at least, depending on your industry and the circumstances. But more and more people are job hopping. They're like, I've had enough, I'm going to move to the next job. I'm not loyal to the company. I'm looking for the quick pay rise, because if you stay at a company, they're not going to give you pay rises in line with inflation. You're only going to get that big 20 to 30% jump if you do get promoted or if you do job hop. So that's what's going on here, right? Lots of people are job hopping, and people don't care anymore about companies judging them. The same way companies don't care about employees, people don't care about being judged anymore. Now, what are some smart side steps for self-employment, right? This is kind of important to consider. Let me zoom out a bit. So lots of people want a side hustle and they want to do something completely different. Now, if you have a strong side interest, I think that could be great. Like, let's just say you work in sales. Before I go through this, what you see on your screen, let's say you work in sales, you're successful, but you have a real strong interest and hobby in videography and you want to be a professional videographer. I know someone who did this quite well. There was a channel on YouTube called Divert Living. And what he was doing, he was a US military guy. He was working successfully in the military, spending time in Southeast Asia and places like South Korea, Thailand, places like that. He was working at the military bases. He met a girl there and they did some traveling. And while they were traveling, he was recording a lot of that on his camera. He had a DSLR camera and he was learning editing skills, drone recording, things like that. And he made a decently successful YouTube channel and they had ad revenue and doing well from that. But then he ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. I think they had some issues. And then what he did is he moved back to New York State, so not New York City, New York State. And he realized, okay, I have all these videography skills. I don't want to go back to the military and risk my life. And it's just not something I want to do. I want stability. I want to live in the US, live in New York State. And what did he do? He started a videography business and he started recording people's weddings and other events that they wanted him to cover, family events. And now he runs a successful videography business, photography, things like that. So that makes sense when you can have a side hustle based on something you're interested in. But in many cases, it makes sense to figure out what is your core skill at your day job and how can you do something similar outside. If you're sales, you want to focus on freelance lead generation, right? You can turn your talent into finding customers for other people in their business to help them get paid to bring in leads for others, right? So you can use your ability to find and convert prospects to help businesses grow without a corporate quota. Because many people have businesses online, but they're not sure how to really get the attention of clients. So you can help them develop their sales skills. That's an obvious side step rather than doing something completely different. The next thing would be your IT support, right? So if you're working in IT, you can focus on tech consulting, right? Leverage your troubleshooting skills to be a tech expert who can help with hardware issues and solve tech problems for clients on your own terms. Now, a successful example of this is, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, he's on YouTube too. He's called Caleb Jones. Now, Caleb Jones was working in corporate jobs in the 90s. He's an older guy, around 50 years old now. And what he was doing is working in tech, and he decided he wanted to be his own boss. So he started helping with hardware tech support, visiting people's offices, and he would solve issues with their hardware and provide them some guidance on how to manage their internal networks. And then from there, he started, he wanted to work from home. So he would, rather than visiting their offices, he would ask them to send equipment to him in boxes, and in certain ways, he would help them with their hardware there. Then he was doing remote software fixes for some of these companies. And he was earning a high six-figure salary, self-employed in the 90s. Now, this is an interesting case study because he managed to move forward successfully from there. From there, he went from a tech consultant to a management consultant, helping small, medium-sized businesses grow their businesses, whether it's physically or online. And now he does a lot of that, and he works remotely online, earning high six figures, living in all sorts of locations in Dubai, in South America. He rents out some property in the US because he wants to leave the US. He's like some of the people we describe on my channel, some of my views, somewhat critical of the way the West is heading. So there's all sorts of ways of using skills you've developed in the work environment to offer it as a freelancer, as a consultant. And then the other thing is becoming an admin guy. Now, typically admin and virtual assistants are something you'd be able to hire maybe from the Philippines or lower cost of living locations. So that's an option for you too, right? To consider if you want to have, if you have good general business skills, how can you be a business assistant to someone who's already running a successful business? So those are smart side steps for self-employment. Now we're going to go through another small clip here. Hope this works. Let's listen to a woman making some decent points. 1 second. Let's get this louder.
Burnout will have you settling for your next job. Someone who has gone through 2 rounds of pretty intense burnout working in tech experienced this thing where burnout will go, well, you're not capable enough, or you're not able to handle the workload, or you're not good enough at your job as compared to your colleagues. And therefore, when you think about what your next career step needs to be, to keep it small. And that mindset is so incredibly damaging to the potential that you already know you have and your ambition. You're not afraid of hard work. You are not afraid of creating incredible results and impact for yourself, for others, whatever your goal is. But when you have burnout whispering in your ear saying you can't do it, you need to entertain a mindset shift, because you can. And yes, there are situational and environmental factors that have put you into this energetic state. You're going to move through it. This is not forever, it's temporary. And learning how to listen to your body and revive yourself out of that state is such an incredible skill set, because stress is going nowhere in our life and it will forever be present. But being able to increase your tolerance for stress is critical. Once you've increased that tolerance for stress and that you know you're unstoppable whilst also taking care of yourself, I want you to look back at the burnout that sent you here and go, I'm not going to let you keep me small. I'm actually going to back myself to do the things that I want to do. I'm going to educate myself in the way that helps me get to the goals that I want to move toward. Burnout was actually one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it was the moment that I recognized this is a reset. This is not the end. Compared to your colleagues and
Okay, sure. So hopefully you could hear that clearly. Before I get into this, let me respond to Vince. So Vince is saying, what are your thoughts on Upwork, TopTal, and Fiverr? I feel customers have too much power over there. Yeah, in many cases, customers do have too much power over there, and you have to spend a long time building your profile there and building a good reputation to charge a higher price. And you're competing with people who are maybe living in India, living in lower cost of living locations where they can offer a much lower price and do an average job or okay job, and they end up taking a lot of your business. So you can definitely opt for it. I would say if you're more skilled worker, like you're watching my channel right now, you should maybe focus on more on Upwork. And also Fiverr, in the last few years, they've introduced like a higher tier for Fiverr professionals. They have some higher tier website where you can charge higher prices. Typically, if you're based in the West and you're not just going to be doing simple things, you want to do more complex detailed analysis at higher price points. So you can always set up profiles there. But it's like at the end of the day, you want to focus on building sorry, let me just lower the volume a bit. So building a strong basis of following around you, and that could be on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. You want them to come directly to you, firstly, so there's no middleman taking the cut like Fiverr or Upwork would do, but also you don't want to be competing against all those other people, right? In some cases that might make sense. If it doesn't require too much of your time, you could set up a profile there, but I would say pick one and really focus on mastering that. In most cases, I would say Upwork or Fiverr's higher tier, which is called like Fiverr Professional, something like that. So we're gonna just to go back to what this woman was saying on the screen. She's talking about, you know, analyzing your situation and not getting caught up in the comparison game with others, right? You want to build a career that matches your lifestyle and where you want to go in your life. And if we go back to my point here, yeah, which is bulletproofing your career. Now, what I want to tell you is that, you know, what my channel is trying to provide for you is to help you avoid going through the motions and just going through day to day. Oh, I have to make money to survive, to just make it to the weekend so I can get drunk or order some fast food and play video games or watch Netflix or whatever. Is to essentially think about, you know, what is going on, like slow down your thought process, right? When you're picking a career, you're picking a lifestyle. What is the lifestyle you want and how you can work towards that end goal? And sometimes it can require side steps in your career. So let's think about this in a bit of detail, right? So how can you bulletproof your career to build the stability? Because you're not being given stability by a lot of these companies you're working for. First way is to learn, like pick up in-demand tools and systems to make sure you stay valuable regardless of what's going on in your company, because your company is always going to be dealing with some internal drama and office politics. You should think about what's the general trend in this industry, what will keep me in high demand. For example, throughout my time in the finance industry, there'll be different hot topics. Sometimes it'll be crypto, sometimes it'll be financial regulation like MiFID II or Dodd-Frank. You've probably heard of some of those. And I would always be focused on that rather than, oh, what's the trend or what's the official professional qualification we have to do. There are many diplomas I could have done in finance, which I opted not to do because I realized there's so many people who are my managers who never did this diploma, and I can read up on these topics myself. But in other cases, I might want to learn about what is the trending topic. How can I get on that project? For example, working on MiFID II, which is a popular financial regulation that impacts so much financial activity. I definitely get my name on all those projects. So when I wanted to leave, I could easily, present myself to recruiters. Oh, I'm working on the hot topic right now, so it makes sense to hire me. Now, aligning yourself. You want to position yourself in a profitable, fast-growing area to keep you relevant without needing a big pay rise right away. What do I mean by that? What I'm trying to tell you is that you want to figure out what is the growing area of your company. And I would always do that even when it got a bit awkward. I remember working at an American investment bank where I was working with one guy directly, but there was another part of the team that had higher demand and loads of trading activity around that. And I was always trying to learn about that instead of what I was doing, which might not have been the best political decision in terms of office politics, but I was like, okay, well, they're making more money than us. Why shouldn't I learn what's going on over there? And that's what I did, right? So you want to align yourself with growing teams, careers, new initiatives, different projects, and focus on working on those that are profitable and marketable. So you know, okay, what's in demand at my company in the small niche of team, but what is going on elsewhere in the industry? How do I jump into that and maybe use the company I'm working at right now that I don't really want to be at, that I don't really like, but maybe go and work in that department or work on those projects. So when I go to a recruiter, I'll say, oh, I've been working on this, and I really can offer that to other companies that are hiring. So that's how you can basically bulletproof your career. While you might not be getting the pay rise you're looking for, you can build a skill set using the company you're at and use them like they're using you before you can jump and go and get the big pay rise later. The other thing is, like, just to give you some examples of tools, right? In finance, there's a tool that's popular to a certain extent, like an AI tool, which is around financial planning and things like that, called Plan for Predict, which it helps and make some finance roles efficient. So I would find out what is the latest hot tool in my industry, hot AI tool in the industry. How can I learn that? Other people, I remember when I was working in risk management and things like that, they'll pick up tools like Python, even though that's technically tech. They would learn that because it helped make things more efficient, and it was a buzzword with senior management. So just saying they're learning Python would help them in their career. Other things is tech skills. So skills like LangChain, right? It's a new hot tech framework that will help with building AI-powered tools and connecting large language modules. So this is a bit of a diagram explaining LangChain, how it's connecting things like document loaders, prompts, chains, language learning models, LLM, and also agents, AI agents. So you can see if you work in tech, you might want to look into LangChain, or maybe you're already working on that. Now, learning the process, right? You want to learn the process and doing things for yourself. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's go to another clip. One moment.
Hi, I'm a burned out individual contributor at my company. I've made the mistake of taking my job way too seriously when I joined my company and demonstrated all my skills to my employer. I mean, I really hit the ground running when I started. As a result, my boss decided to reward me by delegating all their work to me and rebranding it as Reach projects. They claim these projects will get me to the quote-unquote next level. I now basically have 2 jobs and haven't seen much of a pay raise or a promotion in years. Even though I've grown incredibly cynical, I have no choice but to excel every day to keep my job. And since I'm so busy, I barely have time to look for a new job. I guess I got a serious case of what they call Stockholm Syndrome. I digress.
So if you're not familiar,
as a result,
if you're not familiar with Stockholm Syndrome is whereby you kind of, I don't have the official definition here, but you're kind of trapped in the circumstances and you kind of become adjusted to it or learn to like it. Like you're in a job, you're trapped in with a difficult manager and you just kind of get used to it, or just think about it as like, oh, well, this is what I have to deal with, or I should just get used to it and like the situation. Now, the trap he's fallen into is what the trap a lot of people fall into. They end up doing all this excessive work, pointless work, and they don't figure out how the game works. When I say the game, I mean office politics, or the game in terms of making the next step in their career. And if we move on to this part, let me just share this tab. There you go. So one way of figuring things out could be office politics. That would, I'll come to your comment in a moment, Vince, but one thing would be learning office politics to help your career and help your career growth. But the other thing is learning processes so you can do it for yourself, as in setting up a smaller version of the company for yourself for niche online businesses, right? So if you want to make it from junior employee to senior employee quickly, you want to master how things work so you can climb the corporate ladder in record time. there's a term called Company of One. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, and it talks about how you can learn every step of how a system works or a company works, so you can build that freedom for yourself. You can build that independence for yourself by having your own business, your own niche business. How you can run the show without relying on a boss. And the other thing is job hopping, right? How can you job hop faster? If you're stuck at a lower level, if you figure out how the general company works, the general framework, then it'd be easier for you to job hop rather than being stuck there. There's a funny thing I took from WikiHow. Here's this, which says, reminder, you standing on business. Here's someone talking to someone else. My boss tried to get me to do extra work after I clocked out yesterday, and he didn't want me to clock back in. I had to stand on business and tell him that I wouldn't work without pay. And it's just basically saying, you know, there's no point being the guy I just showed in the TikTok clip where he's just working hard and he's not actually getting anywhere. You've got to think, is this actually getting me to my end goal, or am I just burning myself out so my manager can live a better life? And I know it can be difficult. There's some situations where you might not have the option, but it's about thinking about the bigger goal here. So one second. So before we move on to the bonus section, let me explain this in a bit of detail. What can you work from the company? What can you learn from the company you're currently working at to benefit you? Whether it's to set up a side business, progress in the company, move to another department, or job hop. What you want to learn is these things. You know, what is the general workflow? What is the general culture, the processes, the tech and systems used, the daily operations, how the senior management operate and do things, how project management's working, how you could lead projects yourself, and how the general like performance review and promotion process works, because that will definitely help you, right? So this is what I've covered kind of in this last bonus section. Let's go through these. So there's about 3 or 4 points. Firstly, you know, take from the company. That's what you want to do, because a lot of times it feels like the company's taking from you. They're draining you of your time and your energy. But what you want to do is take as much from the company, right? You want to understand how the tasks are moving from start to finish, how they're working efficiently, how you can apply that maybe to a side business or moving into a new company, how the process and systems work, what are the top software being used in this company, in the industry, how you can apply it to your next job, how the automation works, what the procedures are, what the tech stack is being used and how you can develop on that, those tools to work at other companies, and then learn from the top people and the skilled people, why they're in the position they're in. Because typically you'd see many people in senior roles and they're not going to be the most skilled. And you're like, well, hold on, how do they make it there? How do I get there? Could be the office politics, could be that you're learning their strategic planning. These are the type of things you could do. And again, if you're looking to job hop, this is what you should do. Extract all the resources from the company before you do job hop. Here I mentioned shadow skilled employees, like learn what the high performers are doing. How are they finding shortcuts to get their work done? Maybe they are delegating a lot of their work. Maybe they are maybe doing questionable things. I remember working at an investment bank where someone who's one level above me was doing work so much quicker than me. And I was thinking, what's going on? Because we were reviewing trading activity to make sure we're getting the best pricing for clients. And I would do this detailed trading analysis. And then he was like, okay, we get these trading alerts. We don't really have to do that much detailed analysis, just kind of construct a story. We're coming up with good pricing with very basic limited information. And he would do the work I was doing that was taking several hours doing detailed analysis, and he would kind of get a justification for a good price for the client within, let's just say, 20 to 30 minutes. So you're saving like 2 hours compared to me because I was being overly detailed. So find out what little time hacks that people have. The other thing is culture and time management, right? You want to adapt to how top players interact, like I say, how they're saving time and how they're navigating the office politics. Next up, we have moving from a doer to a leader. And as we all know, as I cover on my channel all the time, the people who are doing the most work are not the people who are succeeding. You should figure out how leaders are working, how they're delegating work, right? How you can lead certain small projects that will help you get promoted quicker, right? Figure out what you're not doing right. Pick up on, body language, pick up on different constructive feedback you might be getting and how to quickly fix that so you can quickly progress. Focus on quick improvements you can make to spot inefficiencies, fix them, and make your wins visible. Like when I say make your wins visible, I mean mentioning things in meetings with others, on email trails with your team, so people can see how you're actually adding value and how you're a valuable team member. And then lastly, about building external credibility, right? If you're at a company, you're going nowhere, figure out what are the industry events, what are the conferences you can attend. How can you just basically leverage the brand name of the company so you can network and find your next opportunity or jump on the next trend? And in some cases, training and certifications. Normally I warn against trainings and certifications because you don't want to complete an MBA or a pointless certification and then it just doesn't actually help your career. If it's going to benefit your authority and mobility in the industry, then you should actually study it. But we can discuss that maybe through coaching. This is the book I mentioned, Company of One. I actually listened to this audiobook several years ago, and it's just all about, you know, how you can run a one-person business, how you can operate at a smaller scale and be niche and offer something very unique and really make that work for you. So if you're interested in an audiobook, I'm not affiliated with Paul Jarvis or the author or the book, but it's worth a listen. A lot of people talk about the 4-hour work week. I'm sure you've heard of that. This I see as a bit of an unofficial sequel to it about, you know, how you can actually run a small scale business and how it's successful. He doesn't give you a step-by-step guide, but many successful circumstances. So just to finish up, we've got Vince's comment here, but if he slows down, then that would expose the bosses, wouldn't it? So he's making a joke about the TikTok I just showed, which I'll go back to briefly here. There we go. Where you're saying, oh, if he slows down doing work, that would expose the bosses. And again, like there's so many funny instances of people pretending to work, including myself at sometimes, where I'd be doing so much work so quickly, then we'll have like 3 days or a week without very little work. And we just have to pretend to be busy. And everyone's just scrolling online, reading the news or on Wikipedia, trying to be busy. And like I say, these are on high profile roles where you're on a trading floor and you're dealing with time sensitive issues. But sometimes it will go through quiet periods and you just be wasting time like everyone else. So again, a lot of work is productivity theater. It is acting. It is pretending to be busy when you're not. And that's just the way it is. And that's when you should be focused on your side hustle and figuring out, oh, well, if you're studying for a professional qualification, how you can squeeze 2 hours of quick study while you're at work, pretending to be busy, or focused on other things that would be relevant to maybe financial investing and things like that. So if we just finish up here, I'm happy to respond to any questions right now in the comment section. So we've got about 21 people. Please click like if you're still watching the stream and let me know. I went through that comment. Yeah, so if anyone else has any comments, any questions, I'll be here for another for the time being. Just leave any comments you want in the comment section. I'll definitely respond to you. But just to finish up here, right? So I offer coaching and I'm sure you know, of course, I've got a link in description, pin comment. You've probably seen my videos if you're watching this live stream right now. When you're dealing with all these fake statistics about the layoffs, fake misleading guidance in the office about what you should and shouldn't be doing to benefit your career, you kind of need someone who has an objective alternative take. And that's what I try to do by providing you with helping you build power, pay, and freedom to benefit you and the lifestyle you want. So you don't end up, you know, another chump who's over here. Let me switch to the tab. Where are we? Well, you're dealing with someone like this. You know, many of you have a manager who's like this, or you have a manager that looks like this. You have a manager like this, like people you can't really trust, people you don't really like, and these people are dictating every aspect of your life, what time you come to work, what time you finish work, what you should and shouldn't be doing. And they're not going to give you good career advice. They're not going to tell you how to build your financial freedom, right? They're going to tell you what benefits them, which is like just be stuck in this dead end 9 to 5 until, you know, your days are done, right? Until you wait until you're 70 to get a pension, which might not even be there. And I know some of you joined at later stages, but I'm going to go through Ben Savage. I'm going to go through your comments. Anyone leave any comments you want to leave. I'm definitely going to respond to everything. So now's your time to leave a comment. And I started it with this, right? This was 94% of Gen Z want to hit financial independence before 55. Yeah, keep leaving comments. So 94% of Gen Z want to hit financial independence before 55, and they're planning to use a side hustle to get there. So why did I kind of start with this? Because how are you going to reach financial independence when every day you're working a job and, you know, your money is kind of becoming more and more worthless? So what you meant to do? And it's a difficult reality for many people because you're going to invest as much as you can, but there's only so much you can invest. And there's only so much you can invest when your living costs are going up each month. I mentioned on my channel several times, I live in a relatively small 1-bedroom apartment, and part of the reason I can run the business is because my living costs are relatively low. I could have been house poor, which means I could have bought a bigger house and had higher expenses. And, my bills have gone up like all of yours have. But relatively to someone who has a 3-bedroom house and they don't need a 3-bedroom house, I didn't opt for the social status option. I wanted to keep things low key so I can build my freedom through my business, through helping people and speaking truth, which is what I like to do on my channel, right? So how are you going to build financial independence? And it could be through a high-paying job, which is, of course, I can help with, but it could be doing that and investing effectively and having a side business, whatever works for you. But it looks like Gen Z are waking up to the lie much earlier. Normally, people have a midlife crisis when they feel like they've been lied to and they're in a rigged system, right? Typically, men would have a midlife crisis. They'd buy a motorbike or a car, whatever the stereotype is, a sports car. And then all of a sudden, they're kind of realize, oh, I'm not going to go anywhere in life. I might as well, start drinking a lot of alcohol, being in a dysfunctional marriage, in a dead-end marriage, before they maybe hit their, 50s or 60s and then go to Thailand, and then they sell their house in the West and go and, enjoy their life there. So many people are waking up earlier. Gen Z in their 20s and so on are figuring things out, like the game is rigged. What should I do now? Can't afford to buy a house, can't afford to have a family. What should I do? And this is kind of the theme of the channel and things I mentioned. And just before I go through the comments, again, leave any comments you want to leave. I'm going to respond to each one. Here we have a quote I started with, which really stood out to me. Just give me a second. This quote has kind of gone semi-viral on Twitter. And it says, a man on a 1,000-mile walk has to forget his ultimate goal and say to himself every morning, today I'm going to cover 25 miles, then rest up and sleep. Now, there are many long walks that I go on that you might have known in Spain. They have something called the Camino. And I think different countries have different country-based walks, which means you go on a long walk that could take several weeks, and there's several stop-off points where it's kind of considered like a bit of a spiritual journey, like a personal development journey where you go on long hikes, and it's like a hike that lasts, like I say, several weeks or several days. And it's the same thing, whether it's me building my channel, me going through stages of my career, working at HSBC, Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, trying to push for promotions or different goals, the same way you are, hitting your financial goals, maybe moving abroad after you saved and invested and bought a cheaper property abroad. You kind of got to take it day by day. And that's what the key point of this message is. Now, I'm going to go through the last few comments. Oh, I don't want to miss anyone. Let me go through the first one that I had. No. Ben Savage. Okay. Ben Savage. So I have it here. So like the video, how can I counter a manager that is abdicating all of his managerial duties and placing the operational workload on me? So it depends on the leverage you have, right? What is your situation? Again, link in description if you want to discuss it in detail with me in coaching. But just a general overview, I would say, okay, how is he allowed to do this, right? Is there a way, firstly, I could play dumb and say, I don't know how to do that. Can you explain it repeatedly until he takes the hint and steps up and does his role as a manager? Also, do I want to consider, the time limit of what I have in work hours and say, oh, I can only do so much, basically push back in a nice way. I can only do so much during work hours. Maybe we can work on that the next day. And what you do is you create a natural delay or a natural lag in doing the work over the series of several days and weeks that he has to pick up the pace as a manager, and you start to clearly define what you're doing versus what he should be doing. And you start playing dumb, like, oh, I'm not sure how to do that. Can you help me with that? Or you could say, okay, I've only got time to do these tasks that like a part of my job. I'm not sure about that. Maybe you can help me with that. So you get him included in it. And obviously over time, there's two different personality types, the passive aggressive type who will kind of get annoyed and until they pick it up, or you might have to speak with them directly in your next catch up. Just say, I'm the employee and you're the manager. This is what my responsibilities are and these are yours. And sometimes I'd have to refer to you for help and I can't do everything. So you have to have a direct conversation and keep kind of pushing back until he steps up. Now we've got the next comment from Shameless. Shameless says, what do you think about being a project manager, generic field like business change? I feel like jack of all trades and master of none, complete reset and learn something technical and go solo. Now, again, it depends on your circumstances. And I'm not just trying to, push my coaching all the time, but it's like, where are you right now? What have you done previously? What do you want to do next? What lifestyle do you want? And when you pick a career, you pick a lifestyle, like I say, so you got to think about that too. I think I looked into project management myself several years ago. I know many people have done the PMP, and some people say it's super easy, and you can work in different industries. It depends if you like that personality type of that, if you have the personality for that job. And what do I mean by that is, if you're a project manager, you're going to kind of have to be pushy with people to get work done on time, or get reasons why they haven't done the work on time or why there's a delay, and then present it in a nice way to senior management. And in many ways, you're a bit of like the middleman between what is going on in the project and who's actually doing the work versus management. So you might be in a difficult spot. But as long as you can manage that and you have the people skills, you can speak professionally to senior management, you can be diplomatic with more junior staff or managers at your level who are doing the tasks, and they might like say, oh, we need more time to get that done. We can't just, do everything overnight. So it does depend. And then you say complete reset and learn with technical and go solo. And it depends on your personality type. Now, my personality type, even though I'm talking a lot on my YouTube channel, my personality type is that I am more of an introvert. I don't talk a lot in public. I don't talk a lot. I have presented and trained, 500 or more traders throughout my annual training in some of these American investment banks. But on a day-to-day basis, I prefer my alone time, thinking, planning, strategizing, coming up with ideas like the videos I'm doing. But that's because I prefer that technical element or the more solo work. But if your personality type is going to get depressed or feel like you want to be more of an extrovert, you're more of an outgoing person, then that first time, that first option, the project management, works better for you, because then you'll essentially be able to use your people skills to the max, right? And depends on personality types. Extrovert, project manager; introvert, learn technical and go solo. Next we have, last few comments. Oh, let me just scroll up. It's a bit of a weird tool. Gen Z's figured it out, but they have no leverage, no XP, no experience, and no debt. And no experience and they have debt. Yeah, that's true. They're stuck in a tricky position. And I know people who have done things like move to Thailand and become a marketing expert online and things like that, or people who are doing kind of funny things, which are be maxing out their debt. Maybe I covered in another video someone who maxed out their credit card debt in Canada as a Canadian citizen while they were living in a developing country like Mexico or Thailand and things like that, and they're working in remote sales online, and they didn't mind maximizing their debt and ruining their credit score in Canada as a Canadian citizen because they didn't own any property there. They said, I have no future in Canada, can't afford these overpriced houses, so I'm going to do that. So the point is, with Gen Z or even some millennials and things like that, they'll just say, F it, I'm just going to take a completely reckless chance on my future. And sometimes it works out, sometimes they crash and burn. But the same way the system's losing credibility, all the standard social status metrics and indications or playing the game by the rules is losing credibility, like the standard 9 to 5, which I cover in all my videos, is that like people are going to make these reckless decisions, and sometimes it's going to work out, or even if it doesn't work out, it's going to be harder and harder to judge someone. It's going to be harder and harder to judge someone for job hopping or making that type of reckless decision, because sometimes it's going to work out and following the traditional path is not working out, or it's creating issues that people can't avoid. The same way, like I covered earlier, you can't judge someone who has done a lot of job hopping these days, because a lot of those parts would be, a lot of the job losses could have been due to layoffs that wasn't his fault. If Gen Z make these reckless decisions, it could be making the best decision of their life. What will happen when they all drop out the workforce and get replaced by AI? Is brain rot content going to level up and get more monetized? I get that's kind of a joke. I think the replacing the workforce with AI is going to happen at a lot slower pace than people think. I don't think, like I say, you could have replaced a lot of jobs without AI decades ago, right? We all talk about, like I say, the workplace being daycare for adults, because you could replace a lot of jobs without AI, or outsource them to India. You could outsource thousands and thousands of jobs in the highly technical London finance or Wall Street. You could outsource them, loads of those jobs to India right now, but they're not doing it because there must be a political agenda behind the scenes to keep those jobs, of course. Brain rot content. I think, you know, what happens is it's easier to be a loser now more than ever, because again, being an average person now is being a loser because you're not going to have the basic good quality middle class lifestyle. Also, you're going to have loads of people distracted by things, doom scrolling and things like that. And what I mean is, at the same time, it's going to be easier to become a loser more than ever. It's going to be easier to be a winner more than ever, whether you're focused on healthy habits, gym, building your own business, having an online platform, or leveling up your skills while people are getting lazy and demoralized. The people, typically the men who are constantly looking for those solutions, are going to find what they're looking for, while there's going to be more and more people just giving up. So it's like, it's different ways of looking at it. I think it's going to be easier than ever to win in a sense. Same, that's my problem. I quite like the job, but I'm an introvert. Again, in that case, I'd focus on those more technical aspects. And if in some of those cases, sometimes, unfortunately, being more of an introvert lends itself to more back office roles or less high profile roles, because you kind of have the personality to keep yourself, and those jobs don't get noticed as much or might get outsourced more to developing countries. Then I'd figure out how I could leverage that to becoming maybe a business expert online and offering that to people who run other businesses online, and figure out how to work that. Like I say, I can deal with you directly on like coaching, but based on limited info, that's what I could offer. So everyone, I want you to leave a comment. Oh, well, you've already left comments. That's good. Oops, I've clicked on the wrong page. Share this tab instead. So we're coming to the end. I am concluding it right here. So let me hide that. Remember to click like, share the channel with other people. I am trying to make it to 10K. I do have a video coming out later today, which is a new type of video. Let me give you a spoiler then. So the new video coming out today at 7 p.m. UK time, like 2 p.m. Eastern time for the US people. 1 second. Give me a second here. Yeah, so the video coming out today at 7 o'clock, so in about 2 hours, is a different type of video. Actually, it's me speaking directly to you in the camera. There's no reaction. I'm just telling you a story about dealing with 4 different girl bosses at a particular company I worked out without naming it. It's going to be quite funny, like a funny story, 4 funny stories. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I've got many other topics coming up, you know, men dropping out the workforce, different career advice and stuff. And leave a comment after this video if you're going to watch it later. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends to subscribe too, and I'll see you later today.